Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 6. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the final stage of my personal development from deciding to go into medicine to deciding to go into facial plastic surgery to a very, very important fork in the road, which was how to develop my career, my practice, whether I should go into private practice, group practice, academic practice, a lot of decisions at that stage, and that's what we're going to focus on in this upcoming episode. All right, so let's get into it. So now that we have discussed and heard about, the process of deciding to go into medicine and all that went into that, to the path of developing, a career decision to become a facial plastic surgeon, the fact that you go to 4 years of medical school, you go to 5 years of residency, you go do a year of subspecialization in facial plastic surgery. It's 11 years of training just, after undergraduate. It's a long, long road. And then you have to finally get out there and do this. So how you're going to develop this is a big decision for that stage of the game, because there's a lot of choices: what city to practice in, what type of practice to get into. So let's talk a little bit about my journey. So part that I kind of left out the overall discussion was the fact that I got married to my wife Netta after the first year of medical school. She and I met during medical school. We realized that we were right for each other and that we wanted to spend the rest of our lives together, and decided to go ahead and get married, basically during medical school, which actually happens quite often. And a lot of times people wait till after or sometimes during, but it's one of those things that happens. And it's, I think, in many ways, and this is for the medical students out there and students out there, in some ways it sort of stabilizes some of the variables in your life. And for me, it had a lot of value and a lot of benefits, but it also allowed us to kind of get on with developing our family. By the time I got to medical school, through medical school, we had already begun the process of starting a family. So I actually had my first child during internship, and then had subsequent children throughout residency. And finally, when we just finished up, we were on to our fourth child. So that had a decision-making effect on where to practice. Both my wife and I were from San Diego, and we did the bulk of our training up at UC Irvine. She did her residency and medical school and all that stuff up there as well. So there's a decision whether to stay up in Irvine or come down to San Diego. And because of the children and the fact that we grew up here and both of our families were here, we decided that San Diego was the destination for us to start our lives. And that turned out to be a great decision, because number one, I love San Diego, and number two, it was wonderful being in the same city as the rest of our family, and the early years, the contribution that from our families to be able to help with that took a lot of stress off of both of us. But the decision of where to practice is a big one, because it kind of sets a trajectory for the rest of your career. And I knew I wanted to practice in Southern California. And you might say, why in the world would anyone decide to practice in Southern California, where there is probably the highest density of plastic surgeons anywhere else in the world? I mean, between Beverly Hills, Newport Beach, San Diego, all the in-between towns, there's, you could throw a rock and you hit a plastic surgeon. There's tons of us out here. But for me, I took that as a challenge. I really believed in myself, and that's a really important point. You got to know yourself and know what you're capable of. But I believed in myself, and I've had this feeling or this belief that the cream will rise, and that as long as I can do great work and take care of my patients and produce beautiful and elegant outcomes, that I'm going to do well no matter what city I'm in. And that was sort of tested during my fellowship. As I mentioned, I did a lot of my own patients and took a lot of my, did my own surgeries and got to see them afterwards. And I realized there was a common thread in all these outcomes, and they were totally natural looking. They didn't have any effective plastic surgery. I had mentioned before, I brought in a unique set of procedures that were actually not taught to me. They were sort of self-taught and self-evolved over time with the fat transfer and the vertical lifting and all these other sort of things that made my outcomes visually unique and special. I felt confident that I could bring that product to any market and I would do well. And why not bring it to the market that we love, which was San Diego? So that was the decision for staying in San Diego. Now, the decision, which was a very challenging one, and one that sort of happened at the same time, was whether or not I was going to stay in academic medicine or whether I was going to go into private practice. So as I mentioned, I did 11 years of very, very intense and productive clinical as well as laboratory research under my mentor at UC Irvine, and I loved it. And I thought I was 100% going to become a academic facial plastic surgeon. But what I learned is that it's challenging to do a profession that relies so much on customer service and mobility and being able to adjust to the different changes from client needs to the shifts that happen within an industry within a large bureaucratic system where even adding something to your website or creating a website or hiring and firing certain individuals to make up your team are almost impossible and so slow, that I decided that the decision was going to be that I was going to go into a private practice environment, because that was where I felt I would be able to become more successful in terms of being able to develop the type of practice that I envisioned. And that was a very difficult decision for me, and one that took a lot of consideration. But again, I'm glad I did it for the reasons that I mentioned, and especially looking back at some of the career paths of different colleagues, and I felt that this was the right decision for me. So two big decisions: location, type of practice. I decided I would go into a private practice setting. I joined actually a group practice that consisted at the time of 5 dermatologists, and I was designated as the director of facial plastic surgeon. There was a plastic surgeon that did the body, and the 7 of us had a very very exciting opportunity to practice all aspects of the cosmetic and rejuvenative field of plastic surgery and dermatology. But it sort of coincided with the beginnings of the recession. This was in 2007, 2008, and also going back to sort of having a very strong vision of how I wanted my practice to look and feel. It became evident to me that it was difficult to do that in a group practice, especially where my voice is one of many, and it would be very difficult to be able to express all those different aspects for the patient care the way I wanted it to. So I spent about 6 months to a year within that setting, and subsequently decided to start my solo practice, my own practice. And this was a very, very, again, a very difficult decision, because I had 4 kids. We had a mortgage on a home, and I went, potentially from having a monthly revenue stream, because I was working, and literally going to zero, and having to produce whatever I was going to make to be able to make ends meet for my family and for all of our expenses. So it was a big decision, but fortunately, Netta was very, very supportive of that decision. She stood behind me, and together we decided we were going to start a private practice. And she's also a family medicine doctor, and she was working part-time in family medicine. She had been during this entire time, and decided that she's going to come start helping me within the practice, and we're going to start to build this thing from scratch. And it was an incredible grind in the beginning, because I mean, you go from literally, you're just starting, no one knows you, and you're trying to engender confidence in your clientele, reputation in the community, etc., all the while trying to make ends meet, etc. I was literally all over town giving talks almost every night, going from this, practice introducing myself to that practice introducing myself. I mean, there wasn't a minute that I wasn't doing something to develop, basically a client base, a reputation, a referral pattern, a source, etc. And fascinatingly, slowly but surely, all the pieces came together, and one patient led to 2 patients, led to 4 patients through referrals. And before I knew it, I had a thriving, albeit young, practice that was heading in the right direction, but heading in the right direction very quickly. And again, I believe that the source of this comes down to the fact that the product, the outcomes are, they were and are extremely good. And I knew that at the time. And the patients, they responded to that. And those that saw their outcomes responded to that. Those who went on the website and saw the before and afters responded to that. So the combination of having a good product, being willing to go out there and really hit the pavement and meet as many people as you can, and self-promote and let people know you're in town and you're here to do great work for anyone that they send. All that stuff together led to a practice that started off very slowly, but then started ramping up very quickly. And then within a matter of 2-3 years, it was a busy practice, and one that has subsequently evolved into the current practice that it is now, where we draw patients from literally all over the world, and we treat patients with the same care and the same focus of leading to the greatest outcomes possible every single day. That early decision that went into trying to make sure every patient is treated like family, and we do all the right things for them, and treat them with respect, and always earn their trust and keep their trust, and all that. Those values have persisted for the last 15 years, and the practice is far more far-reaching and dynamic than it ever has been, and it continues to grow in the right direction. And that's where we're at now. And this is the journey from the beginning, literally from high school decision to go into medicine, through the process of deciding to go into facial plastic surgery, and finally the decision to stay in San Diego and develop a private practice that so many patients and thousands of patients have been able to enjoy and get great benefits from over the last 15 years. I hope you enjoyed that. I would love to answer any questions, anything that you might feel I left out. Feel free to shoot it as a comment below. We'll make sure we get to it. Thanks so much, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we'll give a lot more of these type of videos and many other educational bits as we go on in the forthcoming weeks. Thanks so much.